We promise it will be worth your while. How much longer, Jim? I asked. I was riding shotgun with my college roommate on our way to his parents' house. Thanks to the federal holidays, we had a 4-day weekend off. Jim had invited me to spend the weekend at his family's home in San Diego. He'd invited me several times before, and even though I had things to do, I couldn't turn him down again. We should be there in about an hour. Looks like I predicted the traffic correctly. We should be there before the afternoon rush, Jim replied. My family is really looking forward to meeting you, Eric. It was truly amazing that Jim and I were best friends. James Emerson Watson, too, came from a wealthy family and was pre-med, carrying a 4.0 GPA. He'd been an all-state football player and had turned down several athletic scholarships to accept a full academic scholarship instead. He stood at 6'3" and was in incredible shape. He was a real magnet for the ladies. Rich, good-looking, intelligent. These qualities could have made him a real jerk, but Jim was blessed with a great personality too. He was instantly likable. I, on the other hand, was an only child from a middle-class family. My grades were pretty good, and I'd earned a small academic scholarship. I was studying to become a teacher. I was in decent shape, but nowhere near Jim's level of athleticism. We'd met while we were both living in the dorms. I'd once jokingly mentioned how I couldn't wait until my freshman year was over, so I could get paroled. Jim found it funny and, out of the blue, asked me if I was looking for a roommate. I was surprised, as I didn't really know him that well. It turned out that we were both taking summer classes. We ended up renting a 2-bedroom house about 3 miles from campus. The rent was a little outside my budget, but Jim said not to worry about it. It was worth the extra money to have someone he could get along with. Jim and I were perfectly matched. We were both serious about our studies and didn't want our place to become party central. He wanted to do his best and honor his family. His father was a leading surgeon. I was a decent cook, and that suited Jim just fine. He joked that he could burn water. Jim wasn't a monk and always seemed to have a new girlfriend every few weeks. I became his wingman, and as a bonus, Jim got me a few dates. His relationships never seemed to last very long. He said he wasn't interested in anything serious, as he wanted to focus on his studies. I soothed many a broken heart. We kept the same place for the next few years. It truly felt like home. I took on most of the household chores. I figured that since he carried a heavier academic load and paid more rent, it was the least I could do. Here we are, Jim announced. His voice snapped me out of my daydream. I let out a low whistle as we stepped out of the car. Nice house, I exclaimed. It was enormous and even had an ocean view. Thanks, Jim replied as he parked the car. We grabbed our bags, and Jim let us in. His parents were there to greet us. His mother gave him a big kiss and a long hug. I could see his ears turning red with embarrassment. I couldn't help but chuckle. His father introduced himself and shook my hand. It's good to meet you, Eric. Jimmy has always spoken highly of you, Dr. Watson said. His mother then came over to me and gave me a hug. It's like I already know you, Eric. It's so good that Jimmy finally convinced you to visit, she said. I looked over at Jim and mouthed Jimmy. He glared at me and gave me a look that said, Don't you dare call me Jimmy. We went into the living room and sat down. Jim's parents told us that his sister was also staying for the weekend. Kim was Jim's older sister. I'd heard she was almost as brilliant as Jim. She'd graduated college in 3 years and had just become a lawyer. At one point, when both parents left the room, I asked Jim, So, do your parents call her Kimmy? I had a big smile on my face. Jim looked at me and said in a mock-threatening tone, Call me Jimmy just once, and you can walk back to school. Hey, my family has nicknames for me too. No big deal, I replied, knowing I had something new to tease him with. Both parents returned, and Jim and his dad began discussing what medical specialty Jim should pursue. Mrs. Watson leaned over and asked if I could give her a hand. I agreed, and she led me to the kitchen. She was preparing some coffee and asked if I wanted coffee or tea. I said tea. I never developed a taste for coffee. She turned and put the kettle on the stove. As the water boiled, she asked me a few questions. Some were about Jim and how he was doing, and others were directed at me. She seemed genuinely interested in the fact that I was going to be a teacher. She thanked me for helping with cooking. She had nightmares of Jim eating nothing but junk food. She showed me where she kept the tea and told me to feel free to help myself in the future. She pulled out a tea box and said it was one of her favorites, a special blend of chai. It smelled wonderful, and I thought, why not? I helped her carry the coffee and tea into the living room. I was the only one drinking tea. It had a calming aroma and a delicious taste. Mrs. Watson noticed my reaction and said, "I thought you'd like it." I asked her where she got it, and she said it came from a specialty shop in La Jolla and that she'd be happy to take me there sometime. Just then, Jim's sister came in, and I was introduced.
Kim was the same height as me.
She had short brunette hair styled in a professional look. She was still in her work clothes, a navy skirt and jacket, and a white silk blouse. I had to admit she had great legs. I also noticed the engagement ring on her finger. Jim had mentioned that she was getting married to a naval officer next summer. Still, I instantly liked her. Something told me we'd become good friends. She gave me a hug just like her mother. "So, I finally get to meet the person who keeps my brother out of trouble," she said with a charming smile. "Mom, I'm going upstairs to change. I really need to get out of these heels." She rejoined us a few minutes later, now in jeans and a sweater. "So Mom has introduced you to her favorite tea," she said as she took a cup of coffee. "It's too strong for me. I prefer something milder." We talked for a couple of hours. I found myself talking mostly to Kim and Carol, as Mrs. Watson insisted I call her. Jim and his father were engrossed in a deep medical discussion about what field he should specialize in. Carol stood up and, looking at Kim and me, asked us to help her get dinner ready. I felt it was the least I could do, and helped Kim clear the cups. Once in the kitchen, Carol set Kim and me to work. We continued chatting as we prepared dinner. Kim asked me questions about my family and my plans after college. She also talked about work and her upcoming wedding plans. It might have been my imagination, but the conversation was starting to sound like the girl talk I'd overheard whenever my mom and her sisters got together. Dinner was delicious, and I truly felt like one of the family. After dinner, Jim and Mr. Watson disappeared into his study. I was left with the girls and helped them clear the table. As before, I had tea while Carol and Kim drank coffee. We talked for a few more hours. Carol mentioned that since Jim was going in with his father in the morning, I was free to join them the following day. She said they had some shopping and errands to run, and they were also going out to lunch. I agreed to join them. It was better than sitting alone in a strange house watching TV. Kim went upstairs with me and showed me my room. The guest room was nice, although it was a bit feminine. The room was decorated in a floral design. Everything was coordinated. Even the bedspread had roses on it. Kim must have sensed my unease. "I know it's a bit much, but Mom enjoys interior design." She led me over and opened a side door. "I think this makes it more bearable." The door led to a private bathroom. I looked inside and saw a large bathtub. Kim smiled and said, "That tub is fantastic.
You can practically swim laps in it.
It even has jets. I sneak in here when I visit just to use it." She opened the cabinet and showed me a bottle of bubble bath. She looked at me and smiled. "Trust me, the combination of the tub and the bubble bath is almost as relaxing as a massage. It'll really unwind you." After unpacking, I decided to take her advice. As I slipped into the hot, relaxing water, I felt a sense of complete comfort. The scent of the bubble bath was very pleasant. I couldn't quite place what it was. The bottle wasn't helpful, as there was no label. I guess they get everything custom-made. I lay there for nearly an hour. At one point, I was so relaxed that I almost drifted off to sleep. After drying off, I barely made it to bed before falling asleep. I woke around 7 a.m., feeling completely refreshed. I remembered that I was going out with Kim and her mother. I still had a hard time calling her by her first name. I heard a knock on the door, then Kim's voice. "Just so you know, you don't need to dress up. Jeans and a sweater will be fine." I did as Kim suggested. I almost felt compelled to follow her instructions, as if they were a command, but that feeling quickly faded. I joined them downstairs in the kitchen.
Kim was
having coffee and a bagel, and Carol was on the phone. So, one more won't be a problem then? That's wonderful. Thank you so much. See you at 9, Carol said as she hung up. She gave Kim a knowing smile, picked up her cup of tea, and took a long sip. Good morning. You look refreshed, Kim said. What would you like for breakfast? I wasn't very hungry and opted for some tea and a bagel with cream cheese. I assume Jim and Dr. Watson have already left. I asked, taking my first sip of tea. Yes, they left before 7, Carol replied. She glanced at her watch. So, how about we head into town around 8:30? Kim and I agreed, even though I didn't know where we were going or what we were doing. Kim asked if Jim had a steady girlfriend. She said that now that he was engaged, there was pressure on him to get married. I told her I didn't foresee anything in the near future, as he was so focused on his studies. I mentioned that he didn't want to get married until after medical school. Carol chimed in and said that Jim sounded so much like his father. She told a story about how he'd planned to remain a bachelor until he established his own practice. I asked when they'd gotten married. She just smiled and said they'd married before he even started medical school. She explained that she'd put her career on hold, and if it weren't for her help, he never would have graduated. We pulled into a parking lot, and Carol turned to her daughter. So, do you think he's ready? She asked. Kim nodded and smiled at me. Eric, Mom and I want to treat you. We have appointments at our favorite day spa, and we wanted to include you, Kim said. Don't worry, even my dad has been there. I was stunned and could only nod yes. That's great. You're going to love the work they do here, Kim said. We walked in and were greeted by a very elegant woman. She apparently knew Carol and Kim. She looked at me and introduced herself. I was to call her Kelly, and she promised I'd experience something unforgettable. She led me into a dressing room and told me to undress and put on the robe hanging on a hook. As I undressed, I thought I heard her voice through the door. She seemed to be asking Carol if I'd been properly prepared. What she was saying didn't make sense, so I dismissed it. The robe was incredibly soft and felt wonderful against my bare skin. Kelly returned and had me follow her into a small room. There was a chair similar to a dentist's chair in the middle of the room. Soft, soothing music was playing in the background. The lighting was dim, and there was a pleasant aroma, something that seemed like a combination of citrus and florals. I felt instantly relaxed as I sat in the chair. Kelly asked if I'd like something to drink, and I nodded yes. Hey, if I was going through this, I wanted the full treatment. She returned with a cup of tea. Carol says you like this blend, she said as she handed me the cup. Now I have a few questions to ask you before we begin. Kelly started asking me questions about my health, my skin type, and so on. I was getting very sleepy and could barely keep my eyes open. As I was drifting off, I felt Kelly take the teacup from my hand. Well, I see you're ready to begin, Kelly said. Then, just as I was falling asleep, I heard her say, "Good night, Erica." I drifted into the most wonderful, peaceful sleep. I knew my body was being stimulated, yet it was so soothing that I remained asleep. Moreover, I was having the most vivid dreams. They were so realistic it was like reliving my life, except something was different, and I couldn't quite pinpoint what it was. I was back home with my parents, going to school, having birthday parties, and other family celebrations. I moved on to high school, and then college. At college, I ran into Jim again. This time, however, I wasn't his roommate. I was his girlfriend, and I was deeply in love with him. He was also in love with me. It all felt so real. When he kissed me, I could actually feel it. Suddenly, I was back in the real world. I felt Kelly's hand on my arm gently waking me up. Now, just lie there for a few minutes. You've been out for almost 6 hours, she said. I'll go get Kim. My mind was hazy, but slowly clearing. I felt very relaxed. Just as Kim entered the room, I sat up. That's when I became aware of how different everything was. I was still in my robe, but my body was different. I opened the robe and saw that I was now female. I gasped as I saw my new body. I looked up at Kim and asked, What happened to me? She placed her hand on my shoulder. Erica, you've been given a wonderful gift. What I remember most is that I wasn't angry or shocked. Somehow the transformation wasn't just physical. I could feel myself changing internally. My thoughts, my memories, and my sense of self were all shifting. Don't worry. I know you're confused, but I'm here for you, Kim said in a soothing voice. I don't understand, Kim. Why is this happening? I asked as I continued to examine my lovely new body. There was no doubt that I was now female. My body was beautiful. Long, smooth legs. My breasts were firm and round like a C-cup. My hair was longer, but I couldn't see the color. Kim must have sensed my need and handed me a mirror. As I looked at my new face, I heard Kim's reply. Erica, you were chosen for this gift because we sensed that deep down you were meant to be a woman. I put down the mirror and looked at her. If that was supposed to clarify things, it didn't work, I said. She simply smiled. I suppose you're right, but both Mom and I felt that you were meant to be born female. We're simply correcting a minor error by Mother Nature. She sat next to me and continued. The women in our family have been blessed with a gift that allows us to perceive life and nature in ways most people can't. We also know skills and techniques that allow us to make adjustments. She paused and continued. Kelly is my aunt, and both she and my mother were taught by our grandmother. As her daughter, I've inherited the gifts. I'll do the same for my daughters. The gift isn't passed on to male children, so Jim is normal, more or less. She could tell I was captivated by her story, so she continued. Jim can pass the gift on to the next generation, so it's very important that he marries the right woman. The women in our family are responsible for selecting that woman. In this case, that's you, Erica. Her words resonated with me. I looked at her and contemplated what I was going to say next. You mean that my daughters will have your gifts? I asked. And in that instant, I completely accepted my fate. Kim smiled and leaned down, giving me a long hug. Welcome to the family, Erica. She helped me get dressed. I was slowly adjusting to the fact that I was now female. I put on my bra, panties, and denim skirt. As I buttoned my blouse, Kim styled my hair. Then she helped me apply makeup. I looked at myself in the full-length mirror and saw a beautiful young woman looking back at me. In a flash, my new appearance felt familiar. I knew this was me, not some stranger. So, Erica, you were an only child, right?
Kim asked.
Yes, that's correct, I replied. Well, think of me as your sister from now on, Kim replied. She must have noticed I seemed worried. Erica, look at me. As far as anyone else is concerned, you were born female. Your family only has memories of you as a girl. In fact, over time, your own memories of being a boy will fade, much like a dream. In fact, if you don't believe me, check your purse. I did as she suggested and saw that every piece of identification showed me as female. I also looked at a family photo, and it too showed me as Erica. I leaned toward her, and she hugged me. I couldn't help but cry, but they were tears of relief and joy, not sorrow. Outside the room, I was greeted by my future mother-in-law. She was delighted with how quickly I'd adapted to my new look. She remarked that it was a significant improvement. The rest of the day was spent shopping and talking. I learned that they'd suspected my true nature based on how attached Jim was to me. At first, they were concerned he might be gay, but once they met me, they knew the truth, she said. The tea was used to both test me and prepare my body. If my true nature weren't truly female, the tea would have tasted too spicy. The bubble bath was also a preparatory step. It made my body more receptive to the transformation. I asked if Jim would be aware of the change. They said no. To him, I was his long-term girlfriend. Also, his father wouldn't realize I'd once been male. Kim added that this just proves how oblivious men can be. We all laughed at her joke. Back at the house, Kim helped me get ready for dinner. She told me that she'd always wanted a sister and that we would become close friends. I truly believed her. Sure enough, that night at dinner, Jim proposed to me. I looked down at the beautiful ring he slipped onto my finger, my eyes welling up with tears. I was so happy and so deeply in love with him. The rest of the night was a blur. I remember getting hugs from my new family and calling my parents to tell them that Jim had asked me to marry him. 6 months later, we were married. Jim was starting medical school in the fall, and I would take care of our home while we planned to wait to start a family until after he finished his residency. nature had other plans. Our daughter was born 2 years later. Her Aunt Kim and grandmother couldn't wait to help me teach her the special abilities that had been passed down to her. To think it all started with a weekend visit. And so Erica, once Eric, found her true place in the world, embraced her newfound identity, and built a loving family. With each passing day, her memories of her former life as Eric faded, replaced by the joyful reality of her new life as a woman fulfilling a destiny she never knew existed. Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell for exclusive content and early access.
Check out our Patreon.
You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.